Welcome back to the Caregiver Minute, where every weekday family and professional caregivers gather to refine their skills, gain inspiration, and prepare to serve. One of the most challenging things anyone serving someone living with dementia runs into is behavior that's out of character, that's aggressive, that's difficult to manage, where you just are pulling your hair out trying to figure out how to intervene in ways that are helpful. We're going to take a deep dive in this area for the next few days because I think it's incredibly important. Most people recognize the need to reduce antipsychotic usage because that elevates risk of a lot of other problems. And most people recognize what a drain it is on staff and individuals when things are just spinning out of control. When it comes to figuring out how to help people whose behavior is out of character for them and disruptive to other people and difficult to influence, there are a lot of different things to consider. But overall, there's an art side to the equation and there's a science side to the equation. You might say nature and nurture. Now, the art side, the nurture side, has to do with our interpersonal skills. These are things that we talk about a lot here on the Caregiver Minute. It's things like the vital 5 pillars, the 5 principles that really help us interact more effectively with people when they're seeing the world through that lens of dementia. It's the environment as well. It's understanding how the physical space is influencing the way that someone who's confused and just living moment to moment is interpreting the world around them. But what about the science side? What about the nature side of things? What can we do to intervene there? I want to start talking to you today about a way to prioritize assessments in this area. What are the things that we could think about first? And then what are the things that we could think about next? And how would we work through kind of an assessment of the situation in a way that would be helpful and that would balance that art-science kind of equation? Well, the first thing that we need to take a look at is acute medical problems. When someone is lashing out aggressively, it may be a sign that they're in pain. Think of the teething toddler who has no capacity to say, "I hurt so bad." But the toddler's disposition changes, they're biting things, they're drooling. You see an outward manifestation that there's a problem. And because teething is something that all toddlers go through, we expect it. We see it, we recognize it, and we know what to do in a situation like that. But when you have an older adult that's lashing out with aggressive behavior, we don't always think about the fact that they might be in pain. So we've got to figure that out. There are other acute medical problems, like dehydration. I talked just a couple days ago about how important it is to keep people hydrated, because when they're dehydrated, their cognitive skills are deteriorating. If someone has a urinary tract infection or an upper respiratory infection or some other illness, they're not going to function as effectively. You know what it's like when your immune system is all fired up and you're lying in bed and you don't feel like you can think straight and you don't want to talk to anybody and you're a little bit irritable. That's a consequence of the immune system being at work and using our body's resources to fight the fight instead of help us do all the other things that we normally do. And it might be that what we're seeing in the person that we're serving, whose behavior is out of character, is that their immune system is all revved up. We need to think about how to calm that down. Is the person taking medication that might be causing a problem? If someone had a medication change just a few days earlier and now their behavior has completely shifted, it's probably the medication change that's at work. Side effects are a very real thing, and we need to be aware of that. I know several people who, within days of starting statin drugs to lower cholesterol, started having problems either cognitively or physically. I know one man, for example, who about 2 days after starting a statin drug, he could hardly walk, and his legs had incredible pain. Now, that side effect doesn't happen to everybody, but it happens because statin drugs deplete coenzyme Q10, which is like the spark plug in the electron transport chain. That's the body's energy production mechanism. And it can happen, and we need to be aware that if within a few days of starting a medication, someone is having some strange behavior, it's probably related to the medication. There are many other acute medical problems that can influence a person's behavior. For example, years ago, I served a lady who discharged from the hospital to the memory care community I was running, and prior to that, she had been living at home independently, but she had a psychological condition called polydipsia, where she was motivated to drink way too much water, and she diluted her electrolytes to the point that she started having vivid hallucinations. She called the police one day and she said, "Excuse me, there are 12 dead bodies in my front yard. Will someone please come and clean them up?" Well, they got there quickly, and it's a good thing they did, because by the time they broke down her door and burst into the living room, she was totally unconscious on the living room floor. She had depleted her sodium to the point that she's lucky she didn't have a heart attack. It took them 3 days to rebalance her electrolytes and bring her back closer to her baseline. Even blood pressure issues could really affect a person's behavior. If someone has a chronic headache because their blood pressure is too high or because it's too low, it's likely to show up in terms of how they behave. None of us feel very good when we have a headache, and it affects the way that we interact with other people to one degree or another. So the first phase of figuring out how to support people whose behavior is out of character from the science side of the equation is to consider acute medical support. We didn't have time to dig into everything, and you and I aren't doctors anyway, but the more aware we are that these kinds of challenges can have a heavy impact on behavior, the more likely it is that we can be part of the eyes and ears working to figure this out. I hope you'll come back tomorrow, where we'll talk about the second phase of figuring out how to support people with challenging behavior. I look forward to seeing you then, and hope you have a great rest of your day today.